in this series of videos, we're going to talk about three topics. First, we're going to talk about hexokinase versus glucokinase. Second, we're going to understand regulation of glycolysis. And then we're going to understand fructose 2,6 biphosphate, right? F2B, F26BP, right? Now, this fructose 2,6 biphosphate, that's one of the highest yield molecule you can you can think about, right? Now let's go back to our previous chapters, right? So part one is hexokinase versus glucokinase, right? And I think let's start, right? So we have these two enzymes, hexokinase versus glucokinase, right? And in previous video we understood them a little bit. Let's go a little bit deeper, one by one, right? So hexokinase, right? Why do we need, first of all, why do we need two different enzymes for the same reaction, right? Before that, let me ask you a simple question, right? We have a teenager, right? So let's start with question. We have a teenager, right? We have a teenager. She has thirst. She is very thirsty. What else does she has? She has urination, right? Right, a lot of urination. She's peeing a lot. She has elevated glucose. That's why maybe she has, right, urination. Okay. She has ketones as well. Wow, that's a weird one, no? Ketones and glucose together. The pH here is going to be 7.1, right? A little bit less, a little bit acidic. Now, when we give her insulin, right? We give her insulin. What happens? The activity of glucokinase, okay? Kinase should go up, or should it go down, right? That's the question, right? That's what I'm asking. So we have a teenager. She's thirsty. She is urinating a lot. She has high glucose. She has high ketones, and pH is 7.1. And she is administered insulin. So what's going to be the story of glucokinase in this question? Now, before understanding this question, right, we need to understand a lot of things, right? Imagine you have just, you've had your meal, right? You just ate your meal, right? You just eaten a meal, and your blood now contains glucose, right? The question is, what's the first thing that your cell must decide, right? Should I make ATP, or should I take the glucose inside, right? Of course, the question should be, should I take the glucose inside, right? Now, the thing is, why can't glucose just stay in the blood, right? That should also be another question. I mean, I thought about it. What's the problem if glucose stays in the blood? Because if glucose is already in the blood, why does it need to enter the cells? Because the glucose in the blood is useless unless the cells can metabolize it and store it, right? So that's the thing. And what happens after glucose enters, right? Suppose glucose enters in your muscle cells, and can the cell immediately make ATP? No. First thing, we have to have glycolysis happen of that glucose. Now, step one of glycolysis, right, is glucose, with the help of hexokinase or glucokinase, depending upon the location, turns into glucose 6-phosphate, right? Now, why isn't the glucose immediately usable? Because free glucose is super duper chemically stable. So we must, first of all, activate it, then trap it, and then prepare it for metabolism, right? So let's start glycolysis. Let me review glucolysis first. Glucolysis, not glucolysis, glycolysis, right? So glycolysis, let's start. We have hexokinase, right? This is the first step. So glycolysis has actually 10 steps, okay? Step one, step number 2, step number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. That's 3 and that's 1. So 1, 3, and 10, these are irreversible steps because we get a lot of energy from these steps. These steps are reversible steps because we don't get a lot of energy. So here, as you can see in the first step, the glucose is getting changed, getting replaced by glucose 6-phosphate. We are adding a phosphate on the 6th position of the carbon, right? And who is doing that? Hexokinase is doing that, or glucokinase is doing that, right? So why are we doing this? We are doing this because we want to trap the glucose, we want to activate the glucose, and we want to store the energy. We want to allow the downstream enzymes to recognize it. That's why we need to do that, right? Now, if hexokinase works nicely, why do we even need to have glucokinase, right? That's a great question. Now, this is the entire question. What's the difference between hexokinase and glucokinase, right? Now, nature almost never creates two enzymes that do exactly same thing, right? If evolution is there, right? If evolution has both these enzymes, it means these two enzymes solve completely two different problems, right? Now, let's compare. First of all, let's start with organs, right? Now, my question is, do all organs have the same job? No, they don't. Let's compare. Brain. What's the job of brain? Stay alive. Eat the glucose all the time. Can the brain wait till the glucose becomes available or till your blood sugar is high? Can the brain wait? No, absolutely not, right? Even normal fasting glucose must be enough, right? What about skeleton muscles? Well, they need glucose, right? Especially during exercise. They cannot wait either. What about RBCs? They don't even have mitochondria. Then what the hell? They have glycolysis. That's why they have glycolysis. They need glucose all the time. Now, let's compare liver. What do you think about liver? What's the job of liver, right? What's the liver's job? What do you think? The liver's job is actually to maintain body's metabolic homeostasis. That's the number one thing a liver can do and does it, right? Now, liver always asks, right? Should I store the glucose or should I release it? Should I make ketone bodies? Should I make cholesterol or should I, increase my receptors for cholesterol so that it'll come back to me? Should I remove alcohol, right? The main principle is that liver is not a selfish organ. This is one of the deepest and coolest thing in whole physiology. Now, the thing here is that imagine there is only enough space for the glucose. There is one organ. Who should receive it? Who should receive it? The liver or other organs like brain and RBCs? Of course, not the liver. The liver will not receive that piece of available glucose, right? That available glucose will go to the organs that are much more important, like your brain, like your heart, right? Therefore, the liver behaves quite differently. Now, why not let the liver grab all of that glucose? Imagine you just had the breakfast, right? Blood glucose is shooting up. Suppose liver cells were extremely greedy. Now, the thing is that liver would immediately remove all of this circulating glucose. Now, what would happen to the brain? Of course, we'll have less glucose, which will arrive to the brain, and then we're gonna make bad decisions, right? So evolution avoided that. Instead, nature was like, okay, let me design the liver and let me make liver selfless, right? Not selfish, selfless organ, right? Let the other tissue eat first, then it's my turn, right? So whenever you have fatty liver, it's really a sign that, wow, someone's eating not like a lot, okay? Oh, you can have non-fatty too. But that's what I'm saying. Liver is a selfless organ, right? So let me introduce you to glucokinase, right? What reaction does glucokinase catalyzes, right? Exactly the same reaction as glucose turns to glucose 6-phosphate. Same glucokinase, right? Same chemistry, same thing. Now, if the chemistry is the same, if the reaction is the same, why different enzymes, right? Because enzymes are not defined by what reaction they partake in, right? They're defined by who they are, or when they are there, or where they are, how fast they are, what's their condition, how they are regulated, right? So now the real difference is that hexokinase and glucokinase. Hexokinase always works very immediately. It has really high affinity for the glucose. And the thing is that Mr. Glucokinase is always there, right? But the affinity to the glucose is really low there, right? How can I? Let's think about a cashier, right? This cashier, we have a big shop, right? We have a big shopping mall. You have two exits. cashier number 1, cashier number 2. Cashier number 1 is hexokinase, cashier number 2 is glucokinase, right? Cashier number 1 works immediately, even if the customer arrives, even if one customer is there, even if two customers there, doesn't care about the number of customers. Cashier 2 only works when a lot of customers are there, right? It only opens when the store is like crowded. It's like a backup, but it's not really a backup. It just has low affinity for the customer, for the glucose, right? Now, why? Why would God or why would nature does that? Because the store doesn't need every cashier working all day. It's like a secondary, right? So hexokinase is the primary guy and glucokinase is the secondary guy. I'm just giving you an analogy. It doesn't work like that in real life, right? So hexokinase says, if I will see glucose, I'm gonna phosphorylate and I'm gonna do it immediately because I have high affinity and I love glucose, right? Now you can ask me why it has high affinity. Well, I have to go deeper in that road, but just understand this assumption. I'm gonna take this assumption that, hey, hexokinase has high affinity for glucose, so hexokinase will immediately phosphorylate the glucose, right? And what about then where do you think you need to phosphorylate glucose, right? Phosphorylation of glucose means letting the glucose enter inside the cells, okay? So where do you think you need glucose all the time? Almost everywhere. Your heart, your brain, your muscles, right? They need glucose constantly. What about glucokinase? Well, glucokinase is like, okay, I'm gonna wait till other tissues are okay, till other tissues have eaten up, right? So I'm gonna wait until glucose becomes abundant. Now, where do you think glucokinase is gonna be, right? So because the liver should function as a buffer, not as a competitor, right? Liver wants to function as a buffer. That's very important sentence right there, okay? That's very important because liver wants to act as a buffer, not a competitor. If liver is a competitor, then we will have hexokinase in the liver. But fortunately, we have glucokinase, a different enzyme in the liver. And that's the reason liver actually acts as a buffer, not as a competitor. Now let's come back to my question, right? Teenager, she's thirsty, she's peeing a lot of glucose, a lot of ketones, pH is acidic, a little bit acidic, and we give her insulin. And now we are asking if the glucokinase activity should go up or should go down, right? Now we have a teenage, right? Young patient, severe hyperglycemia, right? Glucose up, ketones. That suggests us of what? Type 1 diabetes, because only type 1 will have ketones, right? So what about thirst, right? Thirst means polydipsia, right there, right? Now, why? Because blood sugar, the blood glucose becomes extremely high. Kidney cannot reabsorb this insane amount of glucose, right? So this insane amount of glucose appears in urine, and water is like, okay, I'm gonna be a blind follower of osmosis. I'm gonna follow the glucose. So large water losses, dehydration, and thirst, right? So what about urination? Why she's peeing a lot? Because she has a lot of glucose in the blood, right? So glucose exceeds the renal threshold. Glucose stays in the filtrate. Glucose acts like a osmotic puller, right? Pulls the water inside the urine, large urine, right? What about ketones here? Why ketones? Because you must be thinking, oh my God, we have high glucose. Why do we even have ketones, right? We have ketones because the insulin is absent. The real reason is insulin is absent. Without insulin, cell behaves like they're starving, right? So what does the body do when it's starving? What do you think? It breaks down the fat, starts breaking down these long fatty acid chains, right? Oxidation, beta oxidation, alpha oxidation, depending upon the length of the fatty acid, right? So we have these ketones production, right? Now, even though glucose is super duper high, but due to absence of insulin, we have high ketones now. Now, even though blood sugar is high, yeah. So I hope you understand that. What about pH? Normal pH. What's the normal pH? It's around 7.3 to 7.45, okay? Now, the pH here is 7.1. It's on a little bit acidic side. We call it metabolic acidosis, right? Why the hell we have acidosis here, right? Because ketones are acidic in nature. ketones are just these ketones are just acidic, right? They what is an acid, by the way? What's the definition of an acid? An acid is a substance or a compound, not compound, right? It's a molecule that releases hydrogen ions, and that's why the blood is becoming blood is becoming acidic, right? So this whole scenario, this whole picture is actually of a diabetic ketoacidosis, right? This woman or this person is going under the ketoacidosis because she has no insulin. Now the question has, we gave her insulin. Okay, now the insulin, we gave her insulin. What does insulin actually tell the body? The insulin tells, okay, take the glucose, eat the glucose. Gup, gup, gup. Insulin tells the body we are in a fed state. So, meaning, what does it mean? Plenty of nutrients. Stop making glucose. Stop making ketones, right? Stop breaking the fats. Starts anabolic thing, right? Not thing, anabolism. Start your anabolism. Use that glucose, right? Now, the question here is that will the glucokinase go up or down, right? Why do you think? What do you think? If insulin is going up, right, what will happen? And now insulin is telling, okay, shove that glucose inside the cell. Now, cell has to store this glucose. How would the cell store the glucose? How would it trap? It would trap by using either hexokinase or glucokinase, depending upon the location. But in the question specifically, I'm asking, will the glucokinase go up or down? Yes, it will go up because the glucose has to be trapped. Yes. So that's the thing. Now, why doesn't the insulin upregulate hexokinase? You can ask me, right? The insulin does not increases hexokinase. Why? Because tissue like brain and muscles, right? They already need glucose continuously. They cannot be left. They cannot be left on how should I put it? They do not need any hormonal regulation. Okay, hexokinase is designed to work under basal condition. Only glucokinase is influenced by insulin. Imagine every time you have to have insulin to have hexokinase working. You wouldn't be able to even survive. Imagine if someone has diabetes type 1, they would just die right there. And they would die because they have diabetes. Because their hexokinase is not working, because hexokinase is important, right? To trap the glucose. Now, when does this whole mechanism fail? Suppose we don't have any insulin, right? We have diabetes. What's going to happen? What do you think glucokinase is going to go up or down? It's going to go down. Liver is going to trap glucose now? Do you think it will be able? No, it will not be able. Liver is not going to trap a lot of glucose. Liver will continue to make glucose, that is called gluconeogenesis, from non-carb sources instead of storing it. So blood sugar will rise, of course, and it will rise even more. So we will have even more hyperglycemia. So this diabetic ketoacidosis will even worsen. So I hope you understand the whole shenanigan about this whole shenanigan talking about hexokinase versus glucokinase, right? Hexokinase is present almost everywhere, and glucokinase is only present in liver and pancreatic beta cells, right? And glucokinase has a high capacity for handling glucose, but hexokinase doesn't have that. Okay, so the key concept, I think, is just that these are two different enzymes, right? And they catalyze the same phosphorylation of glucose. Both of them trap the glucose, right? Hexokinase makes sure that tissues like brain, your RBCs, your cardiac muscles, they can phosphorylate the glucose, they can trap the glucose, and glucokinase just allows the liver to function as a glucose buffer, not as a competitor. That's very important, right? So that's it, right? That's it. And I think we can even talk about, let's talk about Km value, Vmax, and let's build a little concept about Km values, right? Okay. So Km values, what are Km values?